Good morning, and welcome to the Truth Network. I am Carlos Head, and I thank you for tuning in this morning. And I'm going to be brief, but I want to talk to you this morning about greater peace while climbing your mountain. Greater peace while climbing your mountain. And I want to talk about 5 things that I believe that will contribute to you obtaining greater peace while climbing your mountain. And I know that there are people out there that are dealing with divorce and breakups with those that you loved and still perhaps love. There are people out there dealing with sickness, and you're wondering, how can I have and find peace when I've gotten a bad report from the doctor? I know that there's people out there that are dealing with job uncertainty and perhaps unemployment that may be wondering, how can I have peace when everything around me seems to be out of order, when everything around me seems to be falling, and I can't seem to be able to hold it up because either there's this great degree of job uncertainty or I'm unemployed. There are people also out there that are dealing with financial issues, with financial ruin, with financial uncertainty that still is called to climb the mountain, still hadn't thrown in the towel, and still are looking to find a degree of peace in the midst of their storm. There's people out there this morning that are dealing with wayward children that are just looking for a glimmer of peace in dealing with their children that seems to be hell-bent on doing things unproductively, hell-bent on doing things immorally, hell-bent on doing things that don't better themselves, that don't benefit others, and just seems to be wasting a lot of time and energy, failing to utilize the gifts that God has given to them. So I want to talk to you this morning about having greater peace while climbing your mountain. And if any of those predicaments that I've spoken to and mentioned refers to you, then just hang on, because I too need a word from God, because I'm not exempt from many of the conditions that I've mentioned to you. But I believe that there's a way that we can have greater peace in the midst of our mountain experience, in the midst of going from the valley to the middle to the top of the mountain, because God has promised us that He will give us His peace, a peace that surpasseth all understanding. So let me get into the 5 points that I believe that will bring about a greater peace in your life while you're climbing the mountain. The first point that I want to kind of talk about is understanding that, one, the only thing that we can control is ourselves. This brings about a peace because oftentimes we find ourselves in chaos internally and in our minds because we're busy trying to control things and people outside of ourselves. We're trying to control things on our jobs. We're trying to control things that our children are doing. We're trying to control our mates. We're trying to control what everybody else is doing, instead of realizing that the only somebody that God has given you control over, and that is not even completely your control, but yourself. You are the only one that you possess control over. And the greatest, I guess the greatest aspect of control that we possess is the control over our thoughts. As a man thinketh, so is he. So I believe that one of the ways that we can begin to find greater peace in our storms while climbing the mountain is to realize that we can't control anybody other than ourselves. I think this is important because too often our grief and anger is predicated on what somebody else has done. Not that we're to walk absent this earth as if things don't bother us and things don't concern us, but you must realize that the only person that you can control in any situation is you. The only person that you can guarantee walk in an upright manner is you. The only person that you can control that says things that are loving and encouraging to others is you. The only person that you can control that gets up with a purpose-filled agenda for today is you. As much as you want it for somebody else, as much as you think somebody else should be doing something, the only thing that leads to is a lack of peace. Because you've taken ownership of things that you can't control. But what you can control is how you will choose to spend this day, how you will choose to serve this day, how you will choose to honor your gifts this day, how you will choose to help others this day, how you will choose to walk in excellence this day, how you will choose to treat others and not say things about and unto others that you wouldn't want done unto you. This is the way that you can have greater peace, because we live in a world of turmoil. We live in a world of evil things happening. But the only somebody that you can control is you. And when we become better at controlling ourselves, better at controlling our thoughts, better at controlling our emotions, better at controlling our actions, when we become so self-disciplined that we are controlling ourselves, then we begin to walk into a level of greater peace. Because at that point you realize that the only something and somebody that I can control is myself. That's point one. We must realize that the only something and somebody that we can control is ourselves. And then realize, consequently, that we can't control the actions, the thoughts, the deeds of anyone else. We can pray and we can speak to that person in a manner to encourage them to walk in more excellence, using our lights as examples, but we can't control what another person do. And when we realize that, then we come and we find ourselves taking a step closer to greater peace. The second thing that I believe will contribute to having greater peace while climbing your mountain is to see your situation as working for your good. To see it as needing to happen to move you physically, emotionally, and spiritually to the next level. But you may say, the doctor has told me that he's found cancer in my body. How can I see that situation as working for my good? You may have said that my mortgage is so far behind that it is inevitable that I'm going to lose my home. How can I see that as working together for my good and needing to happen to move me to the next level? You may be saying that they just announced that there's 100 layoffs at my job and I'm in that number. How can I see that this situation is working and needing to happen to move me to the next level? Well, the opposite of that perspective is to walk around in anger, to walk around in fear, to walk around in uncertainty, to walk around pessimistic, to walk around as a victim. And very rarely does victim mentalities produce warriors. Very rarely does victim mentalities produce purpose-driven individuals. Very rarely, if you're walking around having a pity party, are you in a place physically, mentally, and spiritually to see that this too shall pass? And God would not put more on me than I can bear. You've got to be able to see your situation as working together for your good, to see it as needing to happen, as uncomfortable as it is, as uncertain as it may seem, but needing to happen because God is challenging me to go to another level. When you begin seeing things as not dire, but as things that must happen, then you begin to realize that, there's something that I can do. This is all according to divine order. Now, that's not to say that we should go out and engage in reckless behavior. That's not to say that we should go out and engage in irresponsible behavior. But even in your situation, I tell you that it's still much better in terms of creating a sense of peace to see things from a half full perspective than a half empty perspective. There's something about hope. And when you can see a situation as the beginning of something great as opposed to the beginning of something terrible happening, then it sparks a light in you. It sparks an energy in you that will cause you to be able to not fret in your situation, to be able to see your situation as just the beginning of something great. It had to happen for me to move to the next level. I remember when I was smoking often, and I was wondering, why do I find myself going back to marijuana? But then I came to a place one day where I realized that, you know what? Instead of continually beating myself up, why don't I realize that this has just brought me one step closer to being through with it altogether? I needed to find another perspective in looking at as opposed to looking at the half-empty glass. I needed to look at the half-full glass, and that half-full glass told me that, you know what, I don't feel good about where you are, but understand that this needed to happen so that it would move you one step closer to not having to go back to the place that you said that you ultimately didn't want to be in anyway. So then, all I'm saying is, some things you can't change overnight. Some situations must play themselves out. You can't just begin in the valley today and be on top of the mountain at the end of the day. There's a process that happens, and it's not going to change based on your perspective. It's not going to change based upon your outlook. But what can change is your degree of peace while going through that situation. You can have peace in the midst of your storm. You can have peace while climbing the mountain. You can have peace when you're so tired that you just can't go anymore. You can have peace. I don't know how many of you out there, but I have so many days I tell myself that I'm just tired of being tired. I hope that somebody out there can relate to me. But even in those situations, there is a way that you can find peace. You've got to realize that, one, The only somebody that you can control is you. You control your thoughts. You control your actions. You control the direction that you are traveling. And then you must realize that too, that whatever your situation is, whether it's sickness, whether it's divorce, whether it's job uncertainty, whether it's financial issues, you must see that situation as working together for your good, as needing to happen to move you to the next level. The third thing I want to mention about how we can have greater peace while climbing our mountain is to find and focus our attention on the good in the situation. Too often, as I said the other day, the weatherman will tell us that there's a 30% chance of rain, and we forget that in that 30% chance of rain, that there's a 70% chance that it won't rain. Oftentimes in our situations, whether there be financial difficulties, all we can see is loss. All we can see is imminent danger, instead of seeing and searching and finding and focusing on that which is good. And I know, let me say that it's hard to find good when you're going through tremendous difficulties. It's hard to remain positive when everything around you is falling down. It's hard to remain upbeat when everything seems to be beating you on the back and bending your back and forcing you into a surrender position. It is difficult. I understand that. Trust me, I don't believe that none of you have gone mentally, spiritually, and physically to the places of despair that I've gone and I've had to experience. But I know that focusing on what's wrong only leads to depression. So then that tells me that if this leads to an even worse situation, because now I've got to deal with the negative thoughts in my mind that are consuming me, that are making me believe that my situation is over and is dire and there's no hope and it's all over. This fat lady has sung. I realize that the opposite perspective in finding the good in the situation and realizing that this too must happen to move me to the next level because God is challenging me. This, I can only control what I do, and I can make sure that what I do it with excellence. There's a way to find peace while climbing your mountain. There's a way to find peace in the midst of your storm, and it's to find and focus on that which is good. Look at your situation. Look at your child. And I just want you to think about some of the things that we say that shapes our thinking, that shapes our actions. A spouse will say to another spouse, "You never listen." But do they never listen? Or are they just not listening to you this time? Is it true that they never listen? A parent would say to his or her child, "You never do what I tell you to do. You're just always being disobedient." But is it true that the child is always being disobedient? Is it not true that you're having a moment, but sometimes your child is obedient? We'll come home and we'll say, "They never treat me right at work. Every time I go in, it's this, it's that. It's never anything right about work." Well, guess what? Those mental pictures are creating within you a lack of peace. You can't be peaceful when you feel that you are being mistreated. It's difficult to find peace when you feel that your spouse just never listens to you, that your child just never does what you say, that your employer never recognizes your hard work. Yes, it's difficult. I understand, but again, we must be, as I said again the other day, good finders, because Again, there's good to be found in everything that happens in the earth, even when it's bad. Yes, I'm experiencing financial difficulties, but the good news is that they're just pushing me to work even harder. They're just pushing me to utilize my greater gifts. They're just pushing me into a place that otherwise I may have not been pushed into. Yeah, it's dark today, but the sun cometh up in the morning. Yes, it's raining in my life right now, but this too shall pass. Because the rain don't last always. We've got to be able to flip situations so that we can find the good in them. Because when we can find the good in them, then we can discover peace in them. The fourth thing that I want to touch on, so not to hold you for such a long time, is if we're going to find peace while climbing our mountains, while dealing with our storms, while dealing with the events of life, then we must come to a place where we are truly utilizing our talents to the glory of God. This is important because oftentimes peace is associated with purpose. Peace is associated with direction. Peace is associated with elevation. Peace is associated with completion. And I say that we must use our talents to the glory of God because we must understand that it's God that moves mountains. It's God that opens doors that man can't shut. It's God that elevates us from faith to faith, from favor to favor. So that says that if God is partly responsible for my elevation, if he's partly responsible for my direction, if he's partly responsible for me having the ability to complete things, if he's partly responsible for my mindset, that then I should do things and utilize the gifts that he's given me to his glory. There's something about direction. There's something about purpose. There's something about service that gives humanity a degree of peace, a degree of fulfillment. And see, all of these things, fulfillment, purpose, direction, completion, are all interrelated and tied to peace. 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 Fulfillment. How can you be fulfilled and not be at peace? But then how can you be at peace when you lay down at night and realize that I hadn't utilized all the gifts that God has given me to his glory? And my situation may be a result of my not utilizing the gifts that God has given me. It's difficult to find peace. You can hide from everybody in the world, but in your secret, quiet place, you can't hide from yourself. So then if we can't hide from ourselves, that says that we must demand of ourselves excellence in utilizing our gifts so that when we lay down at night, we can have the peace and the assuredness of knowing that we've maximized what God has created us to maximize. We can lay down knowing that we were able to control the things that we were responsible for controlling. We can lay down realizing that I put in a hard day's work utilizing my gifts. So now I can really see this situation as needing to happen to push me to the next level. Realizing that it had to happen. Realizing that it's working together for my good. See, and when we begin to utilize our gifts, then we can begin to focus on the good that we're doing, which brings about a peace. peace doesn't bring about an instant fulfillment of what you're striving for. It don't change the situation overnight, but it does set the stage. And I know that setting the stage don't mean a hill of beans if you're hungry. If you're hungry right now, you're hungry right now, and you need relief right now. But then you must understand that if you don't see the vision of what's ahead, then you give up in the process. Because you can't see that today worketh together for tomorrow. If I do what I need to do today, then my picture that I painted for tomorrow has a greater chance of becoming reality. We've got to utilize our gifts, not for others, but so that we have peace. So that we know that we've done and we're doing the things that God would want us to do. So that he can look down and see that we've been faithful over the few gifts that he's given us, that he might make us ruler and possessors of even more gifts. But if you won't be faithful over the few gifts that you have and utilize them to his glory, then how can he trust us to give us more? Do you think he believed that all of a sudden if we get more that we're going to be more faithful over what he's given us, that it benefits others? Or that we're going to become even more slothful in our actions? Again, if we are to find peace in the midst of climbing our mountains, whatever those mountains may be. I don't know your situation, but you do. And you know, you may not be in a valley right now, but there's still a mountain that you're climbing. You may not personally be dealing with anything, but you've got a friend that's going through. You've got a mother that's going through. You've got, you know somebody who's having difficulties in their finances, having difficulties in their marriage, having difficulties on their job. And it's our responsibility to unselfishly give to others what God has given to us. That brings about a peace. Brings about a peace. It brings about favor. It brings about elevation. It plants the seeds that have the power to continue benefiting the lives of others. The fifth thing that we must do, or I believe that we can do, that would greatly contribute to finding greater peace while climbing our mountains and in our storms, is to light our vision and to focus on where we're going as opposed to where we are. We must light the vision because there's something about vision. The Bible says that people perish without vision. Where there is no vision, there is no direction. Where there is no direction, there is no peace. Light your vision if you want peace. See not where you feel like you're stuck at, but see where you are going. Yeah, you've got to deal with today, but you can't get stuck at today. You've got to do the things today that moves you closer to your vision of tomorrow, because tomorrow can't get here unless the day passes. So yes, you must do what you can today so that your tomorrow, so that that vision that you've painted in your mind and you've seared into your heart and that you've burned into your spirit guides you and gives you the motivation to realize that though you slay me, hey, though my situation looks dire, though I'm tossed to and fro on every hand, that my future will be better than my past, that my tomorrow will be better than my yesterday. And why? Because the vision says that I can do it. And again, if we go back and we control the things that we can control and we utilize our talents, that would mean that we are doing today the things that are necessary to bring our vision to fruition. So that our vision is not just some pie in the sky dream, but there's a plan, there's a schedule, and there's directions to get in there. We must like the vision. You have to realize that there are so many people that are just in chaos and turmoil and tormented and distressed and feel defeated simply because they don't have a vision. They can't see past their today. All they see is the gloom and doom of today. They can't see beyond because their vision, they had lit the vision. The vision is there, but there's no light to it, and it's very dark. It's very hard to see in darkness. It's very hard to see in darkness. That's why we must light the vision. That's why we must keep the vision ever present in our minds, in our spirits, on paper, so that we can see it often, because it gives us hope. And hope brings about a degree of peace. It gives us hope. It gives us hope. It gives us hope. Light your vision. And then focus on it daily. Focus on it daily. Burn that image into your mind, into your heart, into your spirit. Plan a way to get to that vision that you've lit in your heart, in your mind, in your spirit. Schedule the activities today that will get you taking one step closer to that eventual vision. And then execute your plan. Execute it as if your life depended upon it. Because it does. God is only going to do his part, but he expects us to do our part. He'll open the door, but he requires us to walk through the door. He's promised us his peace, and a peace that surpasseth all understanding. But there are some things that we must do in this earth to realize that peace. I know that, because I deal with it myself. The effects of stress. The effects of life not being kind to the unprepared. I know what it's like to have things not go the way that you had anticipated them go. I know what it feels like to feel like you've given your all and it just still seems to not be enough. And I know how that creates within us turmoil, depression, stress, anxiety, fear, worries. But I also know the opposite side of that. And I know that although I still got to deal with the realities of today, I realize that there's still a way that I can have peace. And if I can have peace while going through my situation, and as I've said to many of you, I don't think many of you have gone through the emotional, spiritual, and physical places of despair that I've gone through, and occasionally still have to deal with. And I say that only to say that if I can find peace that God is not a respecter of persons in reserving all that peace just for me. If I can find it, you can find it. If you can find it, you can help someone else find it. If they can find it, they can help someone else find it. Because it's available. It's available to all of us. We must control the one person that we can control. That's ourselves. We must control our thoughts. We must put our emotions into check. We must control our actions. We must control what we allow in our vessels and in our temples. If it's not anything that would produce the lives that we would want, then why do we allow it into our bodies and into our minds and into our visions, into our spirits? Many of us wouldn't let crack come into our homes, but we allow these other destructive things into our lives. And you can replace a house or a home, but you can't replace you. You can't replace you. So then that means that we must be diligent and vigilant in controlling the one thing that God gave us control over. That's ourselves. We can find peace while climbing the mountain. We can find greater peace in our storms. If we would see that situation, whatever it may be, as working together for our good. Needing to happen to move us to the next level. Needing to happen to challenge us. Needing to happen to awaken that sleeping giant within us. Yes, you can find peace if you would focus on the good in every situation. Becoming a good finder. Realizing that there's only two perspectives to look at any situation. That's to find the good in it, and that's to find the wrong in it. Finding the wrong is important because it says that once you discover what's going wrong, that you can correct what's going wrong. But if you stay stuck on focusing on what's wrong, then ultimately you'll just become a fault finder. Again, I'm not whitewashing to say that you got to discover the cause of what caused the cancer. But discovering what caused the cancer does absolutely nothing with fixing the cancer. Yeah, you discover what caused it so that once we resolve the issue, you find you can resolve and be resolved not to go back to the things that contributed to the cancer in the first place. But the doctor must focus not on what caused the cancer, but how do he heal and fix and remove the cancer. So what I'm saying is that you must focus on finding the good in your situation, utilizing your talents to the glory of God, that He looks and say, wow, sure has been faithful over the few talents that I've given. Now I can bestow even more talents to him or her. And lastly, we must light and keep lit, keep ever present, keep nearby our vision. Our vision. This is how we find peace while climbing our mountains. This is how we find peace in the midst of the storm. I hope that I've helped somebody out there, so that I know that my suffering hadn't been in vain. I know that my situation has served to, if it doesn't benefit hundreds, will benefit one. And if each one teaches one, then I know that my one can be the spark that ignites the fire. Will you be a spark that ignites a fire today? Will you first find peace within your own situation and then share hope with another that they too might find peace in their situation? I only encourage us to help as many as we can, realizing that we can have all the things that we want if we would help enough people to get the things that they want. I love you. I thank you for tuning in. And until next time, God bless you and goodbye.